So what we're going to cover today is some key terminology and concepts, risk and protective factors, and in particular, what you can do, the behaviors of family acceptance. You know, as you heard, we put on this symposium for education, and there are things, even if you're not ready yet, even if your moral compass isn't in line just yet for supporting in the community, but maybe your family member came out as LGBTQ or trans, there are behaviors you can do that will help everyone feel connected and loved. Because at PFLAG, our tagline and our mission is to lead with love. Okay, so key terminology and concepts. The first to understand is that diversity is human. I mean, if your camera's on, you know, you can see all of us look so different. Every single human trait is on a spectrum. You know, our height, our hair color, our toe length, our running speed, and my friend from Children's Hospital Orange County, whom I took this slide from, gave us the half marathon race times, and you can see it's on that bell curve, right? Even earwax consistency, my friend is telling us, is different. It's on a spectrum. Even diversity in sexual orientation and gender, including being trans, non-binary, or gender fluid, is a part of that human diversity. I'll go over again. I think it was Kai earlier who shared about the gender unicorn. I use a genderbread person. Some helpful terms that we will talk about in this presentation as well as in our discussion is, well, sex, and we often say sex assigned at birth or the anatomy, or gender, which is really, you know, what we know in our minds of who we are, right? Gender expression, how we choose to express who we are. And that is individual, that is up to each person of what will help them feel comfortable and safe. And sexual orientation, that's both in the attraction as well as the even romantic attraction. That can, physical and romantic attraction can be different if you really start to think about it. Okay, we have a few more people entering the waiting room, so I hope they're added. Great. Okay, so just as a reminder, we're recording right now, and this is a presentation after which we'll get into a discussion together. So given those key terminology and concepts, I want to also introduce something else. And that is that, you know, we're putting this on because we hear negative messaging about LGBTQ people out there. And we know that that negative messaging has a direct influence on our loved ones who may happen to be in the LGBTQ community. There's risk of depression, anxiety, and I should have forewarned with a trigger warning, suicidal ideation. That is, unfortunately, part of the story in many of our journeys. It could lead to substance abuse and eating disorders. We know that this is a direct negative messaging about LGBTQ people directly influences these types of risks and behaviors in our loved ones. And so it's enough that, you know, we hear it there, then we also get our internal stressors. Like what if like Debbie's family, we were raised in a family that's very conservative and already we're getting those messages at home. So who here hasn't really told themselves a lot of different stories, right? Those internal stressors, like I'm telling myself and reinforcing those negative things, right? So we exacerbate it. And it's further exacerbated when there's even more external stressors, especially if it comes in the form of rejection from your family and your school environment, your communities. feeling real discrimination. And as Debbie said, it can happen anywhere, even in progressive or blue states. There are pockets of the communities that are vocal against our LGBTQ loved ones. Even worse is then when it's also institutionalized, when there are barriers to receiving the healthcare that is absolutely life-saving and needed. So these are the stresses that our minority and marginalized communities can feel. So risk and protective factors include that, when there is in particular that family rejection and the rejection of identity, there's such an increase for our LGBTQ youth in suicidal ideation, depression, and substance abuse. These figures come from, I don't have it noted here, but typically we get these figures from the Trevor Project, which Debbie also mentioned, a trusted source for communicating and surveying the LGBTQ community, and who vitally serves as with hotlines and chat rooms to support them. And when they feel that, in particular, what I'm putting together here is not only, and let me make sure I can see on my whole screen, not only, if they have one form of discrimination. So say if a person is a person of color, that is one form of discrimination. They have a higher percentage of risk towards that attempted suicide or that level of stress. If they have a second, like they're LGBTQ, or if they have a third, like maybe they're neurodivergent, there are different minority stresses that when it's multiplied, even the risk becomes multiplied. So I want people to think about the intersectionality of yourself. Think about yourself and think about, well, I'm a woman of color, I'm older, I'm the mom of a trans daughter. There are multipliers to our identity that in some cases, particularly when they're actively discriminated against and talked about in the media, cause these risk factors for depression and such. Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to be totally depressing, but what is the positive, or what can we do? What are protective factors that we can do as a community of affirming folks? Well, here we're talking about access to affirming spaces. What does that mean? Many schools will have GSA clubs. It's been called Genders and Sexuality Alliances. It used to be called the Gay Straight Alliance. So I think it's now Gender and Sexuality Alliance. And that's one. Or what about your family? When your family space is affirming, then that could be a protective factor. If your church is affirming, that could be a protective factor. If your friend set, like I like to say, I love having my child in a rainbow bubble because that is absolutely, I feel she's safe. And when you are able to make sure that your child or LGBTQ loved one has access and is participating in affirming spaces, that lowers their risk of suicidality, depression, a disconnection. It may seem obvious, but it isn't. And I'll lean into why when we get to the behaviors. But these spaces do exist. I'm so glad that you were here and found our safe space. And many of us work hard here to create more of these safe spaces because we know how important it is. So given that, so here like just reaffirms what I was saying. Feeling safe in your family with that family acceptance. Making sure that if you're a parent of a trans loved one, you're also trying to carry that safety over into the school with anti-bullying, anti-harassment policies and carrying through on those policies. The use of affirming pronouns. And for so many people that has been a hard one, but like what I said in his closing of our previous session, that is so important. What I like to say is, what if somebody was using your wrong pronouns to you? Like if somebody were to say he all the time to me, I would think it's so strange. Like why are they doing it? It would get annoying. I would probably correct them, particularly if it was malicious, and sometimes it is. Sometimes our trans loved ones have experienced that malicious use of their incorrect pronouns. Getting access to gender affirming clothing and accessories. And for example, getting access to gender affirming medical care. That was when my child came out, that was the first advice I received. I think I saw my friend Janet in here in this session, but when I came out to my friend Janet, because I knew she also had a trans daughter, the first thing she said to me was, "Congratulations." And I thought, what are you talking about? What am I supposed to do? And she said, the first thing you should do is get an affirming medical team around your child. And thankfully, I was with a health system that had a history and renown for being gender affirming. And so I got right into the program. And it was a relief because I'm not a doctor. I'm not a gender therapist. I don't know how to, what anything was about, but at least I could be in the professional care of those who did. And my child felt safe and protected. So those are the protective factors to mitigate the increasing risk of all of those multiplied discriminating factors towards our LGBTQ loved ones. So what we're talking about is behaviors. Here you are in this session, and you might be wondering, okay, I have been confused. What can I do about it? And so I'm going to take myself off of this presentation for a moment and share instead a video. It's just a 3-minute video. Let me make sure, actually, I have to stop sharing so that I can make sure I share with the right. Where am I? Oh my goodness, how do you stop sharing? I need to share the right sound setting. Okay. How am I doing this? Thank you for your patience. You know what? I will try this, but you tell me if you can hear it, because I don't think I shared correctly with the sound setting.
Moving to a place of accepting something without fully understanding it.
You can hear it?
Is really probably the hurdle that most people
make it louder.
Have a hard time taking.
And I think part of what was so challenging for me was there was a lack of trans role models.
I grew up in an all-white neighborhood, so there wasn't a lot of me. I didn't see a lot of me growing up.
Whether they're cis or trans or non-binary.
Life is so much more difficult for our children who are not, straight. And so knowing this world in which we live, knowing that you have the capacity to make their way easier, make their way easier. Don't make it more difficult because you can't get out of your own way.
It's not how you want to love your child. It's how your child needs you to love them.
Your one job is to love and protect your children. That's it.
And we told her, we love you and we support you living your life, you know, as a girl like you are.
We love you and we're here for you and we're gonna go through this with you.
I'm a Black man, I'm an African man, I support my transgender child, so should you.
I think the fact that there are people who are willing to risk life and limb to express their true selves should be evidence enough.
So I want them to know that there are adults who are fighting tooth and nail. There are adults who would die for them.
Folks who are gender minorities have been with us since humans have been with us.
A third gender and a variety of gender expressions they're historical.
Just like you know a person who's left-handed or who has red hair, there are people who are gender minorities.
They're not odd.
They're not alone,
Yes.
despite the fact that it looks like it.
They are different, but that's not bad.
They're really just people.
And that it's okay for them to explore, and that it doesn't mean that their initial expression was wrong.
They certainly didn't choose to be gay or transgender or like.
I think they felt like they had to choose. And they don't.
Allowing them to live their lives doesn't impact anyone else.
She's aware that that her life could be in danger just by the fact that she is a Black trans woman, a biracial trans woman.
I would like for my daughter to be in a world where she's just treated for who she is.
Why does there have to be this bullseye on her back?
I'd like her to be in a world where her transness makes no difference.
Can't we just see her as a person of value?
Okay, thank you for watching that with me. Let me continue sharing. So what are we talking about? Here, okay. So, you know, we just listened to some amazing parents of trans loved ones, and they're sharing their perspective. Like, why can't they just live out their lives, you know, and feel value and respect? And here are this material here I'm about to share with you is from the Family Acceptance Project. What the Family Acceptance Project has is, after over several thousand interviews and years, decades really, of research, Dr. Caitlin Ryan put together evidence-based poster series that help us identify our behaviors that are either uplifting or rejecting of our LGBTQ loved one. So I'm first going to show these rejecting ones. I'm going to leave it here for a good while. So I want you to take it in. And there's no judgment here. You know, we know, I mean, I know that I've done some of these things. So for example, prevent your child from having an LGBTQ friend. That, like, if you actively did something like that, that would, of course, send a rejecting or a negative communication to your child that being LGBTQ or associating with them is not right. Or you know, something that I actually did, which is a funny thing. Pressure your child to be more or less masculine or feminine. And mind you, like, when my child came out as trans female, trans feminine, so she was assigned male at birth, and at 16 she came out as trans female. And I went and got educated, and I actually allowed my pendulum to swing the other way a bit too much. And I said, honey, you know, let me help you. I think I understand now. Let me help you. Do you want to wear some of my skirts? You know, I'll get you a dress. So I was actually pressuring my child at this point, even in acceptance, to have her be more feminine, you know. And that was like it was too much. So it was almost, it was policing my child and telling them, well, you don't look feminine enough. I think you need to do more, right? And this is from an affirming parent. I'm willing to share that because I want people to be mindful of their behaviors. And it took another friend to point out to me, look at what you're wearing, Stacia. You're not wearing a skirt. And they were absolutely right. Just because I'm a woman doesn't mean I have to be wearing skirts all the time. You know? Or, where there are other situations like when maybe a child is young and they start to say, like Debbie's child had, that they were a girl. Sometimes our reaction is to say, are you sure? How can my child be sure? So when you tell your child or tell other people that, oh, it's just a phase, that's, even if you tell it to somebody else, your child can hear you, and that is a rejecting message to them. Because, what I often say to parents who think it might be a phase is I say to them, well, when did you know that you were a boy or a girl? Or when did you know that you were attracted to men or women? Oftentimes the answer is, well, I just knew. So if you just knew, then how is it that you think that your child doesn't know? So there's lots of ways that I hope that as you're reading these, you ask yourself, did I do these things? Do I see how this is actually rejecting to my child? Because like in those earlier slides, what we saw is when we feel unsafe and rejected and not part of that inclusion, that's a risk factor for us. Let's go on to the affirming behaviors. What can you do? So even if maybe your child just came out and you're not so sure about all this trans stuff, why not bring your child to a group or an event while you're learning? Bring them right along because you're demonstrating to your child you're trying to learn, or tell them if you're in the position today of wanting to learn more, tell your child that you attended this because you're trying to learn more to understand. Oh, we're all okay. And that child is still the same person. So if it's your child you're trying to understand more, I can assure you, your child is still the same person that they were even before they came out. Their same soul. And if you're here learning because you're an ally and you know of other people with trans or LGBTQ children, that child has not changed. The only thing that they did when they came out was share their truth. Just like you might know your truth. It's just that we don't have, if we're cisgender, heterosexual, it's not like we feel like we have to come out. But something else I learned when my child came out and I started to educate myself more was that my child's coming out. The reason why my friend said congratulations was because I had made myself a safe enough parent for my child to come out to. So yay, I did my job to be safe for my child. And two, that I forgot my number two. But that our children just want to be loved. Just like in that video, they said, that's our only job, is to love our child. So using their chosen name and pronoun that matches their gender identity, especially after they've communicated it to us, is something that we ought to do to show that we affirm them and we want to protect them and mitigate those risk factors, that there's plenty of risk factors happening to our children outside of our family unit. So if we can help them within our family unit, even better.